Right, and we are happy to have Constance Harrington here from Shift to talk about the screening matrix today. Recently, we reintroduced the screening matrix to everybody as part of the requirements for your assessments and the assessment packet, essentially, that you hand into your SME for review. And we're, since it's been a little bit since your shift training ended, we are just want to kind of resurface the screening matrix, allow you to ask Constance any questions after she goes over it. And so without further ado, Constance, take it away.
Hey, thanks, Paul. Nice to see everybody. Lots of familiar faces here. So, yeah, let me just dive in and talk in generalities about the screening matrix, if I can, for just a few minutes. You know, for those of you who completed the Enabling Technology Integration Specialist coursework, this tool should be familiar to you. Not only is it covered in the coursework that you completed, but it's required for successful completion of your experiential learning projects. So all of that being said, the person or people in your organization who did earn their ETIS, if you're not the one, should be able to serve as a resource for that screening matrix, of course, as well as the Enabling Technology Assessment and Integration Plan. So, but for those of you who might not be as familiar with the tool, I thought it might be helpful if I just spend a little bit of time talking about it. Before I do that, when I'm talking about the tool, does everybody know what I'm talking about? Do you know the tool that I'm talking about? Nodding heads, thumbs up. Anybody, if anybody doesn't know what I'm talking about, please speak up. And I can pop it up real quick if you're uncertain. Okay, I'm going to assume then everybody knows what tool that I'm talking about. So I'm going to go ahead and just talk about it. I think some really important things for you to know about this particular tool. So let's start off just by talking about the purpose of the screening matrix. It's really designed to help those ETISs in determining if a person and his or her team members support the adoption and implementation of enabling technology in order to meet specific goals or outcomes. So our current screening matrix is really designed to be completed as the circle of support is considering technology solutions. Whether that's annually or more often, it really just kind of depends on the circumstances. But I will mention something here that I think is important. We do discourage the completion of the tool during the annual planning meeting. And the reason there's actually a couple of reasons for that. The first is that we know at those annual meetings, there's typically not an adequate amount of time to have the discussion, largely because of the amount of things that are required to be included in that meeting. So instead, we would encourage you to look outside of that meeting to have that conversation where there's the time and the space to really engage in meaningful conversation. Now, the second reason that we would recommend that is it's important for the team to determine their readiness level for a specific type of technology, not necessarily as a whole. So remember that some of your team, some of the people that you support might be ready for some types of technologies sooner than others. And in fact, as we have had you go through shift curriculum and we've had these conversations, I think you have heard numerous times that we really do encourage teams to start small, to create successes and to build confidence with technology. And as that happens over time, the person supported in their team are more likely and more willing to consider other types of technologies, especially for those that are kind of showing some initial hesitation. So I want to also spend just a few moments talking about why it's important to ensure the team's readiness for technology adoption. So first and foremost, the person supported, and if there does happen to be a guardian or conservator involved, if that's applicable, they must really approve of that technology prior to implementation. So to implement technology without that consent really does go against a core prerequisite for a technology first approach to services, being the assurance of those person-centered practices. So the second reason that we feel that it's very important to do this tool is, well, I'm actually going to give you, maybe a scenario. Let's say you've got a situation where somebody is refusing to use a technology. And of course, that would be made very clear through raw data and progress reports. So when that happens, it does really require some investigation. What we know is that oftentimes we find that the person doesn't actually have an interest in the outcome. And what that tells us is that proper discovery hasn't taken place. And of course, there are other explanations. I'm not saying that that's the only one, but it's really important that the technology is supporting the goals and the outcomes that the person has for themselves. Again, kind of going back to that whole idea of person-centered practices. Now, if you do find that the technology is not being used over the course of time, by the way, the expectation definitely is there for the team to explore that further and to, if necessary, implement some sort of corrective action or response as appropriate. Okay, so third reason that we think the readiness, it's important to assess the team's readiness, is that we know any team member, and it doesn't matter what position they hold. It can be a part-time direct support staff member who works 3 hours a week. If they have a really great relationship with the person and the family, any staff member can sabotage successful implementation for technology. And so for that reason, it's really important to know that the entire team supports the use of technology to support the person's goals. We know for a fact that increases the odds of success and reduces the likelihood of abandonment. We certainly do not want people acquiring technologies and then going into an environment 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, or a year later, and finding that technology sitting on the top shelf of a closet gathering dust. So we know that we definitely do not want to have that outcome. So one of the things that we often get asked here at Shift is, okay, so let's pretend that we have a team member that's not on board, right? So what do we do? So we do have some suggestions, and I'd like to just highlight a couple of those. The first is it's really useful to sit down with the person and find out exactly what their objections include. And so I'd suggest actually making them a list and listening really carefully. And when I say that, I mean, don't listen to respond, but listen to understand. Make sure that the person feels that they're being heard, that their concerns, their worries are truly being understood by you. And then once you have that understanding, of the person's objections, you can start to address each one of them. And so some ideas for addressing those. We know that some concerns really are based on misinformation. And so in circumstances like that, it might be really helpful to offer some additional educational resources. Now, I would also encourage you to provide resources outside of yourself. So it's likely that a person who has maybe some of this misinformation is going to want to hear from other reputable sources to kind of, double check you just to make sure that, what you've been telling them is accurate. The second reason, or a second suggestion for you, would be to, take a look at providing a tour of maybe a demo location, or give the person an opportunity to experience some technologies in person or themselves. And that's largely because we know a lot of these concerns are related to a lack of experience. So that's a great way to proceed. And then we also know that some concerns are due to either a lack of understanding or kind of fear of the unknown. And so having people, this is where your success stories are so incredibly important. having people who can share their positive experiences is so powerful. Now, I do realize that some of you are pretty new to this initiative, so you might not have people yet who can share their success stories. But I would say if that's the case, take a look at identifying some videos that can be used. There are states and organizations that really have developed great videos and resources to tap into where you can help people start to understand what these successes look like and actually hear some of these stories from the voices of the people supported and not necessarily from professionals who are working in the field. So now I feel like I've been talking for a while. You've been so patient in listening to me. I'm happy to field any questions that you may have or clarify any of that I've presented so far.
Constance, do you recommend sitting down with the circle of support and the beneficiary all at the same time to go through the matrix and kind of have an open discussion that way?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a judgment issue. It's not a bad idea. What I would say is that you probably don't want to involve the entire team until you've got the person. And if there is anyone who has legal standing in that person's life, it's not a terrible idea to make sure they're on board first before you involve the whole team, because those are the most important people. You can't proceed unless you've got them on board. Now, I'm not saying that it's not fine to sit down with everybody, because that could generate some great conversation. You could use both strategies. You could maybe talk with the person and any, their legal representation, kind of get their, thumbs up before involving the rest of the team. You could take either strategy. I think you guys are going to be the best ones to make that decision because you know the people that you're working with the best.
And I just reiterate one of the points that you made. So the screening tool, it's not like a binary outcome. It's not, yes, this person's ready, and no, this person's not. So that person falls on the floor for forever and ever, right? I just want to reiterate your point about, using that as an opportunity to educate whomever it is on the circle of support that is having concerns or is not ready, so that you can flip that no to a yes, maybe the next time you do the screening. So I think that's really important for everybody to keep in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the other things I was going to mention is if you look at the screening tool, it's broken down into kind of positions, if you will, for lack of a better term. So, it talks about the person supported and anyone that's kind of got that legal standing, family members. It talks about support coordinators. It talks about direct support staff. But there might be others that are on that team. So that doesn't mean that you should only get the opinions of those folks. That's really just to give you an example, a format in which to collect the information. Let's say that you maybe have a medical professional on that person's circle of support. It's good to have their opinion as well. So don't feel limited just by, the fact that there's like only 4 categories of team members that are listed on that matrix. You do the matrix for anyone that's on the team that's a primary supporter for the person too. So I don't want you to be, I don't want you to feel like there's not the capacity or that's not appropriate to evaluate how other team members are feeling about the technology.
And I'll throw one more question in, Constance. So, my knowledge of how things were set up in Tennessee, a little bit about how things run in Minnesota. Providers are strongly encouraged to screen everyone in their care. Now, we're in the pilot program. We're giving some latitude on that. So some of you are concentrating on one geographical area because it's a little bit easier to sort of maintain and build up. And so casting this super wide net across multiple counties may not be the right idea, but just conceptually, think about long-term using the screening matrix across everybody in your care. And Constance, I don't know if you have anything to contribute around who should be screened, and I know you mentioned how often, but who should be screened?
Yeah, I think that, I don't know that it makes sense to, let's say that you're supporting 100 people, and maybe the organization has said, we've made kind of a short list of 25 people, a quarter of the people that we support, who we think are probably just really outstanding candidates for this pilot project, really outstanding candidates for enabling technology. I don't know that it really makes sense for you as an organization to go out and complete a matrix and an assessment with the 3/4 of the people who are not involved. I mean, your focus really does need to be on who are you actively kind of implementing this pilot with. I mean, that's the group of people to really focus on. And so, of course, over time, we want to see you expand that, but you also don't want to set up the scenario of where you go in, talk with a person and talk with the team about technology, say the 3/4 of the people that you're not focusing on. And then 3 months passes, 6 months passes, a year passes, and they never hear back from you again about technology, right? Because you only did it to meet a requirement. So that's why I would steer you in the direction of really focusing the attention to completing these, the matrix and the assessments for the people that you're actively working with to pursue some sort of an enabling technology to help them meet their goals or outcomes.
That's a really good point, Constance, because I'm, as you're saying that, I'm thinking, you only have so much bandwidth to do assessments and organize the installations and do the support. So you may only be able to support 10 residences with the staffing that you have now or whatever. So if you assess 100 people, right, and 65 of them want tech, they are going to be waiting, and that'll cause frustration.
Yeah. And then the other thing too is it gives you an opportunity if you say, okay, we're going to, maybe really focus on providing enabling technology to these 25 people who are really interested. That's cool. You can also then use that as an opportunity to implement technology really well with 25 people and then start to gather your success stories. And then that's when you can really start to market, advertise, spread those success stories to other people to start to get people interested in thinking about how technology might benefit them or their loved one. So instead of going to people and doing the matrix and the assessment and kind of getting their hopes up or kind of making false promises that, oh yeah, this is something that's coming your way, you literally may not be able to get there. You may not be able to get there for a year. And so I think taking a more focused approach on, again, like Paul said, knowing what your resources are, here's who we're going to be able to get to, here's where our focus is going to be, but you can still use those success stories as opportunities to get people excited about the initiative in your organization.
Yeah, that's a great point, Constance. I think the other, just to add on to that, is oftentimes folks who have success with technology giving them more independence, more self-determination, are really excited to talk about that to other people and show that off, right? What they get to do now, and it's lean on that and leverage that. I mean, you all are, your titles, the folks at the providers who are titled tech champion, right? You are a champion for that within your organization. But find those champions who are the users, the beneficiaries, right? And they're going to feel really good about sort of being part of helping others find that path to using tech.
Yeah, and they are going to be your most powerful advocates for the spread of enabling technology in your organization. People want to hear those stories. They don't want to hear from you. I mean, you're all nice people and wonderful and smart and educated and skilled in your own right, but people want to hear from other folks who are in a similar situation. They want to know what their experience has been. It's so incredibly powerful. So Paul's absolutely right. Whatever you can do to capitalize on that is gold.
Any other questions for Constance? And Constance, you may have more. I just wanted to pause here.
Yeah, I think I shared I was going to be fairly brief. Hopefully that's helpful to you guys. If you have other questions, of course, I'm happy to have you reach out to me, but I'm not hearing a whole lot of questions today, so.
Oh, Megan's jumping in. Go ahead, Megan.
I'll break the awkward silence. So I've had a mentally draining week, and I was getting my coffee whenever you said you would pop up a reminder of the screening matrix. Would you mind going ahead and doing that, just so my brain will wrap around it for today? Thank you, Constance.
Yeah, I should be able to pull that up.
I can share one as well. I think I have it here.
Thank you. And see, we don't have Adobe Access any longer, so I can't pull up my quick saves that I've got anymore if it's in a PDF format. So it makes it a little bit difficult.
Okay, so you should be able to see this now, I'm hoping.
Yep.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
All right. Yep. I remember.
Yeah. This is the fellow that we're talking about here. And this is what I was talking about, like over here on the left, it says self-advocate, family conservative guardian, support coordinator, care manager. These are great, but you might have other people on your team that you really want to be, you guys hear what I'm saying there. Cool.
And that, the quick guideline on the first page of the screening matrix, basically is if they're doing this from memory, which is always bad, but if there's 3 boxes in one section of a person is not comfortable, then that's a signal. Boy, I'm probably misstating this, so maybe Constance, you could just quickly review that.
Oh, you're doing fine.
That guideline.
Yeah, it's basically a lot of the information that I already kind of covered. I don't know, is that even big enough for you guys to see? It seems really tiny on the screen here.
It's large enough for me to remind myself.
Okay. Anyway, sorry about that. I'll come if I need to put it back up, I can. But basically, it's saying a lot of the same things that I was just talking about. So they're basically saying, like, if you have more than 3 checks in a comfortable column, that indicates like an overall readiness. And that if you have 3 checks in other columns, that's when they're, we're basically saying, yeah, this is a time to have, additional conversation or education or experience, or, doing some of the other things that I had mentioned to try and build people's confidence and increase the buy-in for considering technology. Yep.
All right. Any other questions, Constance? All right, Constance, thank you so much for taking the time today. Thanks for just getting this back into the front of everybody's brain as they continue to screen folks. And certainly, if anybody does have questions as a follow-up, reach out to me and I can get the answer or the questions off to Constance if I can't answer them myself. So.
Yeah, I think most of the folks on here have a direct line to me already. So you guys know where to find me, all of you folks who are in accreditation already. So feel free to go ahead and reach out to me. I'm happy to help. But thanks everybody for your time. Hope you have a wonderful day. And I'll pop off if there's nothing else for me.
We're all set. Thanks, Constance. I'll stop the recording.